One great place to begin in our background to the book of Colossians is in one of its neighboring cities called Hierapolis. Hierapolis is famous for its hot springs that are the result of some thermal activity that brings calcium carbonate to the surface, so you have these beautiful white cliffs that are all around us, and hot springs that are generated from the Earth's surface. You'll find Hierapolis to be a place filled with tourists today because there's still a lot of associations not only for recreation but with the healing properties of this water. In the ancient world, the healing properties of this site and the thermal activity also had cultic and superstitious associations. I'm sitting on a platform that's part of a big temple complex. The temple to Apollos is behind me, and this was called the Plutonium. Pluto, the god of the underworld, was understood to be somehow generating a lot of the seismic activity under the site, and the priests from the temple of Apollo oversaw the plutonium, which was a kind of crevice into the underworld where there was methane gas that was deadly. In fact, they would throw animals down there and they would die. And even recently, people have had to be protected from this site. One tourist died as a result of the methane gas coming up to the surface here. What I want you to do is to have a sense of the things that make Hierapolis a city of both recreation and also cultic activity. Add another piece to this, all of the warm water, all of the healing properties, the spiritual dimensions, and you have a place that was sort of seen to be mythically rich, a kind of gateway to the netherworld, the other world, Hades, hell, and this place was overseen by the priests here. Now, in the days of Paul, who in all likelihood came here, and certainly Epaphras, who planted a church here as well as at Colossae and Laodicea, there was this worldview that was associated with these elemental forces. Interestingly, in 60 AD, before Paul died, and the early church was getting ready for a major kind of seismic shift of its own with the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, in 60 AD there was an earthquake here that went right through the temple and the plutonium because it sits on this fault line. So let me give you a perspective that Paul shares to the Colossians when he talks about the basic principles of the world. Paul says in chapter 2, "See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of this world rather than on Christ." The term basic principles is the Greek word stoicheia, which can also mean cosmic forces or primal forces. The reason I want to emphasize this is that in Paul's missionary journeys, we often think about how Paul is confronting philosophy and theology. He's trying to bring the gospel to Jews who in many cases are debating him on theological grounds. He's debating Greeks sometimes on the basis of philosophical grounds. But remember, in Paul's first missionary journey, he went to Cyprus and they had a supernatural encounter. And in Paul's journeys, there would be occasions where Paul will confront the forces of the enemy. And I'd like us, as we're reading Colossians, to be aware of this because Christ's supremacy is not only over those things that are seen, but over those things that are unseen. And the devil, who is the author of deception, Paul will talk about that, the author of disabling the believers, and also the author of death, is at work in the world. And the missionary movement is not only confronting the wrong ways people think, but the ways they've been enslaved to the powers of evil.